Alright, these videos are here to show you how to do the quizzes that you just got finished with. So they're to be an aid to help clarify what you didn't understand and to see if you're on the right track. So here we begin with quiz 10, or quiz week 1 for you guys, which is a 10-week countdown. First question is in the figure at the right, lines M and N, so here's your lines, are parallel and cut by transversal A. List all angles that are congruent to angle 1. Alright, so here is our angle. We want to find out all the angles that are congruent, which means equal to. Now, the nice thing about parallel lines and two lines crossing is that only two angles are created. Angles that are equal and angles that add up to 180. In other words, supplemental. So angle 1 and angle 3 are considered vertical angles, and the property of vertical angles are that they are equal in measure. So angles equal to angle 1 are angle 3. Angle 1 and angle 5 right here are considered corresponding angles, which means they are also equal. If you look at the two angles, one would be called obtuse because it's greater than 90. 2 is acute, which is less than 90. So you have basically two kinds of angles created. A larger angle and a smaller angle in this case. If you look at angle 3, that would be a larger angle. Therefore, it's relating itself to angle 1. Angle 5, same thing. With that line of thinking, angle 7 is also a large angle. So angle 7 is the third angle that is equal to angle 1. List all angles that are supplemental. Now, supplementary means they add up to 180. In other words, they are the other angle, not the equal one, but the other angle. And together they make a straight line. So that means if you are starting with angle 1, then angle 2 would be the smaller of the two angles and would add up to 180. So supplemental angles to angle 1 would be angle 2, because that's the smaller of the two angles, therefore completing the sum of 180. If you notice, this line right here, angle 1 and 4 also go together to make a straight line. So angle 4, and again we're talking about the smaller angles because those will be supplemental. So angle 6 also is the smaller of the two angles, so that would add up to 180. And then angle 8. All angles that are supplementary to angle 1. If we know that angle 1 is 113, now we can look at actual numbers. Angle 2 is again the smaller of the two angles, so 180 minus what we know, 113, would give us 67 degrees. Those two angles, these two right here, add up to 180. So 2, being the smaller of the two, would be 67. Angle 3 is the larger of the two, and also equal to angle 1, so that's 113. And angle 8, again the smaller of the two angles, must be 67. The area of Minnesota is about 86,900 square miles, which include 4,800 square miles of inland water and 2,500 square miles of Lake Superior. What's the probability that the meteor that lands in Minnesota lands in water if the meteor does not land in Lake Superior? So they're telling us a little hint. It's not going to land in Lake Superior. So we have to do something very important here, and that is we have to take away the area of Lake Superior, because we know it's not going to land in there. They just told us that. If we subtract those two, we get 84,400. Now this represents our total area that the meteor could land in. So to find out the probability that it lands in water, well, we take the area of water that does not include Lake Superior, and we would divide that by the new total, which has Lake Superior taken out of it. And if we do that, we will get approximately 0.0569, and they want a percent, so we would move that 2 places to the right and get approximately 5.7. Now, you would get B if you did not subtract the area of Lake Superior. And the only reason we subtracted Lake Superior was because they said it was not going to land in Lake Superior. So therefore, we had a little bit better idea. A very important hint. The next question asks us, which graph is most appropriate if we're given the scores of the Vikings and the scores of their opponents in the first 8 games. Now, because we have 2 variables, the Viking score and the opponent's score, the best way to represent this data is a scatter plot. And a scatter plot is an XY graph where this would be the Vikings and this axis would be the opponents, and you would just kind of say when the Vikings scored this much, the opponent scored that much. If the Vikings scored this much, the opponent scored that much, and you'd have these dots linking these 2 numbers together like a coordinate. So a scatter plot is best used when comparing 2 variables. Which equation represents the line graph below? Well, when we look at it, we know that it is horizontal. Horizontal lines only intersect the y-axis. So any point on this line would look like this. This coordinate is 2 over 3 up. This coordinate is -2, 3. This coordinate is 0, 3. And if you notice anything, all coordinates that I can come up with will have the same y value. So therefore, this line always has a y equal to 3. And that is what our equation would be. B. Number 5, what's the value that could not be the y-coordinate of a point on this graph? If we were to graph this on your calculators or by hand using a XY table or something like that, where you would pick an X, pick a Y, plug in points, we would get a graph that looks like a V. It's called a graph of an absolute value. Now, any point on here would have a negative or positive x value, like for example here, let's say, but nowhere could we put in an x and get a negative y. See, the graph does not go down here at all. So you can say any negative number and you'd be right in this case. So for example, -2 would be a possible answer. Now to put it in our table, or in our graph here, our answer key, we'd say negative. There's our negative symbol, and fill it in. And then anywhere in here we could put a 1. It does not matter. But we also have to fill in the circle that corresponds to it. And this ends Week 10 countdown quiz, which for you is Week 1 quiz.